Hi everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder how women's voices are heard in a place like Kyrgyzstan, especially online? Well, this new study dives deep into that fascinating question. Imagine a place where digital spaces are becoming a major stage for social change. This research looks at Kyrgyzstan, a country in Central Asia, and specifically how feminists are using Instagram to share their message. It is like a digital town square where people are talking about important issues, organizing, and trying to make things better. So, what is the big deal? Well, not many people have really looked closely at what feminist groups and activists in Kyrgyzstan are actually posting online. We know international groups have pushed agendas there for years, but a new wave of activism is emerging, driven more by local needs. This study wanted to map out this digital feminist landscape on Instagram, which is super popular there. How did they do it? Think of it like being a detective. They collected over 800 posts from almost 20 different feminist Instagram accounts over about a year and a half. Then they carefully analyzed each post to see what topics were being talked about, how the activists were framing their messages to encourage action if different types of accounts posted about different things. And what kind of content got the most likes and comments? And what did they find? It turns out that the main focus for these digital feminists is on really important issues like violence against women, women's rights in general, the ways institutions aren't working properly, and how to empower women and build a sense of community and solidarity. The most common topic by far was physical and domestic violence. This really highlights how critical this issue is in Kyrgyzstan. When it came to how they framed their messages, they often talked about solutions and strategies for change, which they call prognostic framing. This means they're not just pointing out problems, but also suggesting ways to fix them. Interestingly, even though there are different kinds of feminist accounts like established organizations, social projects, and individual activists or influencers, their main topics, and how they framed their messages were pretty similar. This suggests they're all working towards a common goal. Now, what content really grabbed people's attention? It was content that felt deeply connected to Kyrgyz culture. The slogan "Free Woman means prosperous Kyrgyzstan" got a lot of likes and comments. This shows that linking feminist ideas to the well-being of the whole country really resonates with people. Let's dive a bit deeper into the topics. Remember how Instagram is a big deal in Kyrgyzstan? It is used by a huge chunk of the population. This makes it a really important space for these feminist messages to spread. The study confirmed that gender-based violence is a massive issue. Physical and domestic violence was the most common topic. This matches what other researchers have found about the situation in Kyrgyzstan. It shows that this isn't just a minor problem, it is a central concern for the feminist movement online. Something fascinating here is that while things like bride kidnapping get a lot of attention in academic studies, it wasn't as prominent on Instagram as other issues like domestic violence or institutional failures. This is a really important point. It shows that what scholars focus on isn't always exactly what activists are prioritizing in their everyday online communication. It's a reminder to ground research in what people are actually talking about on the ground. Going back to how they frame their messages, about half the posts use these collective action frames we talked about. This means they're deliberately trying to shape how people understand issues and encourage action. And remember, the most common frame was prognostic, offering solutions. This suggests a strategy of being solution-oriented, which might be smart in a place where open criticism can be risky. But it is also important to note that about half the posts didn't use any of these specific frames. This suggests that feminist accounts on Instagram might be serving other purposes too, like educating people, sharing ideas, or just letting people know what the organization is up to. When they looked at the different types of accounts, NGOs, social projects, and individual influencers, they found that most of them were talking about similar things. This is great news for feminist solidarity, showing a shared agenda. However, there were some subtle differences. Social projects and influencer activists were a bit more likely than established NGOs to talk about really critical issues like abuse of power and patriarchy, and to use more direct framing. This might be because they're less constrained by formal structures or donor requirements. Let's circle back to engagement. The most popular content was that slogan, "Free Woman means prosperous Kyrgyzstan." This really underlines the power of connecting feminist goals to the nation's progress. It's like saying, when women are free, everyone benefits. Interestingly, while physical and domestic violence was the most common topic, it actually predicted fewer likes. The researchers think this might be because this issue is so widespread that people might be a bit desensitized, or perhaps the way it is presented doesn't always resonate strongly. But when domestic violence was combined with diagnostic framing, blaming the problem, it actually boosted engagement. This is a key takeaway. It is not just what you say, but how you say it, framing issues critically, especially when combined with naming problems and assigning responsibility, can make content more engaging. Another important point is that the frames themselves, without the content, didn't predict engagement. It seems people respond more to the substance of the message, but the framing can enhance it when done right, especially when it's tied to culturally relevant ideas. Now, every study has its limits, and it is good to be aware of them. The researchers noted that the codebook was very detailed, which sometimes meant that many specific topics didn't appear often enough to analyze deeply also. Because they used quantitative methods, they couldn't capture all the cultural nuances and subtleties of how language is used online. They also mentioned that they found fewer influencer activist accounts than they hoped for, which means comparisons between account types might not be as strong as they'd like. So what does this all mean for us? This study is super important because it's the first to really map out what Kyrgyzstani digital feminists are talking about. It shows that they're focused on very real, pressing issues like violence and institutional problems, and that their priorities might differ from what we see in academic research. It also shows us that how activists frame their messages isn't always a perfect fit with old theories. They're using these frames, but also using social media for emotional support, building community, and just letting people know what they're doing. And the biggest lesson, culturally relevant content, like that slogan, is gold. It connects feminist ideas to the local situation and really gets people involved. In a world where space for civil society can shrink, this study shows how powerful digital platforms like Instagram can be for activism. It's a tool for connection, for sharing, and for keeping movements alive. For us, this research is a reminder that activism is constantly evolving, and digital spaces are a huge part of that. It highlights the importance of listening to local voices and understanding how culture and context shape the messages that resonate. It makes you think about how you can use online platforms to support important causes in your own community. What do you think about the power of digital feminism in Kyrgyzstan? Let me know in the comments below, and if you found this breakdown helpful, be sure to like this video and subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more science explained simply. Thanks for watching.